I spent 7 years pursuing Liu Ryan, until one day, right in front of me, when our child called someone else daddy. My heart completely turned cold. So, with the help of the system, I chose to leave the mission world through death. It wasn't until 3 years later that the system found me again. Saying that Liu Ryan was on the verge of madness, I looked at my wife, my son, and the little one who was so full of life. If it hadn't been for the system suddenly reminding me, I might have completely forgotten who I was. And the fact that I had a past like that. Host, how have you been lately? Its voice sounded somewhat awkward. As if it didn't know how to reintroduce itself properly, it greeted me in a stiff manner. Here's the thing. Do you remember the mission we worked on together 3 years ago? Because you chose to leave the mission world through death, you became the white moonlight of your target. These past few years, she's been searching for the truth behind your death. A while ago, she found some clues. Now, things are getting tricky. It seems she's about to lose her mind. And she even showed signs of self-harm. So, could I beg you to help us finish the mission once again? Just for 1 month. No matter the outcome, we will send you back. And no longer disturb your life. I lowered my eyes. If she's gone mad, she can go to a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor. But she did all this because of you. Don't you have any compassion for her? Liu Ryan will go mad. I snorted coldly. When I left back then, things between us had turned very strange. Even when I said I would die, she didn't stay for a single second. I was her loyal dog. A fool who came whenever she called and left whenever she dismissed me. I once braved a storm just to buy her a bowl of wontons she craved. But she didn't wait for me to come back. She got into Ji Boduan's car and walked into a fancy Western restaurant with him. I stood outside holding the wontons, waiting for her. When she saw me, she looked both surprised and irritated. Jiang Ye, what are you doing here? She noticed the wontons in my hand. Her brows furrowed. You actually went to buy them? I just suddenly wanted to eat them. But I don't really love them. She turned back to glance at the elegant and peaceful atmosphere of the Western restaurant. Don't you think I'm more suited to eat that? She didn't even glance at me when she left. But now, the system says she's about to lose her mind because of me. Perhaps my cold laugh triggered the system. It spoke urgently and anxiously. Don't you remember? You both have a child. Thinking of that child, my hands instinctively tightened. Back when I was on the mission, Liu Ryan was the second female who was crazily pursuing Ji Boduan. She and Ji Boduan were childhood sweethearts. Their families even held an engagement ceremony for them. They were a perfect match, a couple that seemed so well-suited. And just then, Ji Weiwei appeared. Ji Boduan was irresistibly drawn to Ji Weiwei, willing to defy his family for her, breaking off the engagement and abandoning his inheritance rights to go abroad with Ji Weiwei. By the time I arrived, Liu Ryan had become a woman who had done nothing but bad deeds, a villain cursed and used by others. It was me who gradually helped her, redeeming her. We naturally began living together, and even planned for the future. We even held a wedding, and had our child, Jiang Ye. At that time, I was filled with endless hope for our future. I even thought about staying forever, always by their side. But when Jiang Ye turned 1, Ji Boduan returned to the country. After he and Ji Weiwei went abroad, they were cut off from all financial support. The young master, who never had to lift a finger, suddenly had no way to secure a decent standard of living. The two of them argued constantly about the most basic things. And after a huge fight, Ji Boduan left her and came back. The day he returned happened to be my birthday. I had made plans with Liu Ryan for the 3 of us to celebrate at home. But I waited from 6 o'clock until 2 a.m. When Liu Ryan finally pushed open the door, I knew she had gone to pick up Ji Boduan. I even overheard Ji Boduan on the phone with her. He said, "Ryan, the feelings we've shared since childhood can't possibly be gone." Liu Ryan's eyes reddened, and she rushed toward Ji Boduan as though she had found hope. She once again left me behind. Yes, once again. Such things had happened dozens of times in the past 5 years. Only I knew that Ji Boduan and Ji Weiwei could never be separated, and only I was willing to wait for Liu Ryan, time and time again. Liu Ryan froze for a moment, looking at the cold dishes on the table and the untouched cake. She gently placed the sleeping Jiang Ye back in his room. "Sorry, Jiang-chan. Happy birthday. I got so busy that I forgot. I'll make it up to you with a gift tomorrow, okay?" "No need. The birthday's already over. The gift isn't necessary anymore." During that time, I felt like I was trapped in a vicious cycle, trying to love Liu Ryan as fiercely as I did at the beginning. I didn't want her to crash into a dead end, and I didn't want to lose her so easily. She spent every day entering and leaving the company with Ji Boduan, discussing business until late into the night. One day, I couldn't bear it any longer. I shouted at her in anger, "Liu Ryan, do you even have a heart?" Liu Ryan had never seen me in such an undignified state. She stepped back, irritated. "Jiang Cheng, what's happened to you? You're acting like a jealous wife. Don't overthink things. My relationship with Boduan has lasted more than 20 years, and now I'm just helping him return to the Ji family." But just a few days after saying that, she started taking Jiang Ye to meet Ji Boduan. The day that truly pushed me beyond my limits was when Ji Boduan sent them back home. When Jiang Ye, who had just started speaking, actually shouted "Daddy" at Ji Boduan. That was his first time ever saying "Daddy." And it was directed at the very Ji Boduan who made me feel so humiliated. Ji Boduan worked for 3 years. And with Liu Ryan's help, he managed to re-establish himself in the Ji family. During those 3 years, he, Liu Ryan, and Jiang Ye seemed more like a family. They would celebrate holidays together, birthdays, and exchange gifts. Jiang Ye would call Ji Boduan Papa Ji. But he's over 4 years old now, and he's never called me Dad. Every time I tried to correct him, Liu Ryan would stop me. "He's still a child. Why are you pressuring him?" And then Jiang Ye would get even more stubborn. "I like Papa Ji. I don't like you. I don't want you to be my dad." The day she decided to take Jiang Ye and go on a trip with Ji Boduan, I made my last attempt to keep her. I looked at her with tears in my eyes, asking one final time, "Ryan, if you go to find him, I won't be able to live anymore. Even so, will you still choose him?" Liu Ryan wouldn't listen. She thought I was using manipulation to threaten her. So, her gaze toward me was filled with impatience. "Jiang Cheng, I never really liked you." I watched Liu Ryan's retreating back and softly whispered, "Goodbye." She heard it, but her steps only paused for a moment before she left without a second thought. The system sighed and asked me, "Have you really decided to leave this way?" I was unwavering. "Yes, I am certain. If living cannot leave a trace in her heart, then I choose to forget her through death. Please think this through carefully. Consider it, at least, for the sake of how hard I tried 3 years ago to bring you back." The system's voice sounded again. I hesitated. When I was young and reckless, I was passionate about extreme sports and paid a heavy price for it. When I was about to die, it was the system that gave me a chance to live. Even when the mission failed, the system, with a bit of compassion, didn't erase me. Instead, it allowed me to live healthily. My wife was the nurse responsible for my recovery. At the time, she marveled that I was a medical miracle. When I told her the secret, she even sighed in disbelief. But that didn't stop us from falling in love later. Getting married, having children. Now, there's the system that saved my life. And there's my beloved wife and child. I found myself trapped in a deep dilemma. That night, my wife noticed my distraction and patiently asked me. I thought for a moment and told her the truth. Yow, what do you think I should choose? To my surprise, my wife took my hand. Whatever happens, it's still alive. I don't think we can give up on her. I knew that my wife's words came from her trust in me. It was also the instinct of a healthcare worker. My eyes stung with tears, and I tightly held her hand. Aren't you afraid I won't come back? My wife looked at me with a playful pout. We've come this far through everything. I trust you more than I trust myself. Our sleeping son turned over, mumbling something in his sleep. Daddy! I gently covered him with a blanket and promised my wife, don't worry, I'll complete the mission as soon as I can. You'll have to take care of our son during this time. When I come back, I'll make it up to both of you. I returned to the original world after only 3 years, but the mission world had already moved 10 years into the future. And now, 10 years later, Ruyan was looking at me with such a devout expression. She said, Jiang Ye, is it really you who has returned? She pushed the child beside her toward me. Jiang Ye, quick, call him Daddy. Jiang Ye's face turned bright red as he walked over and hugged me tightly. Daddy, in the past, I had imagined countless times how I would feel if Jiang Ye ever called me Daddy. But now that he had, I felt nothing but calm. I sighed and decided to tell them the truth directly. Ruyan, from the moment you left in front of me, I already said goodbye. I really did die. You saw the body, didn't you? She became a little agitated and cried out in despair. No, that wasn't you. You're such a proper person. How could you accept such a tragic death? I watched as her emotions gradually spiraled out of control. I couldn't help but regret agreeing to the system's request. Ruyan's condition looked much worse than I had imagined. At least it was far worse than when she was abandoned by Ji Boduan. You can think of it as a momentary flash of life, or as my soul crossing over. In any case, I'll only be here for a month at most. I'm willing to return to repay the system's favor. After a month, whether or not you can accept the reality, I will not stay. I hope you won't make this too difficult for me. Ruyan was afraid I would leave immediately, so she threw aside her pride and tried to hold me back. It's okay. A month will do, as long as you're here. Ruyan led me to her current home, a spacious, luxurious apartment in a prime location, with a view facing the sun and facing the sea. This is the home we once planned together. She handed me a new set of clothes with a pleasing gesture. Jiang Ye, we've kept your things here all this time. I never believed you were truly dead. I raised my hand to stop her. What happened to Ji Boduan? When I chose to leave through death, the fastest way was to die in an accident. I chose a car crash. But both I and the system miscalculated. The one who hit me and caused my death was Ji Boduan, the male lead. After the incident, Ji Boduan chose to flee the scene, and the system couldn't just watch. Her own male lead turned into a murderer. So, with the system's encouragement, the Ji family used their connections to cover up the truth. They arranged a scapegoat for Ji Boduan. And it wasn't until 10 years later that Ruyan uncovered the truth from that time. 10 years ago, I died under Ji Boduan's wheels. How strong must his mind have been to have pretended nothing had happened and continued traveling with Ruyan after dealing with the car? The system said that for these 10 years, Ruyan had used many means to uncover the truth. She even almost got silenced by the Ji family, and in her madness for me, After self-harming, she made Ji Boduan pay a heavy price. Liu Ruyan fell silent. She couldn't answer me. I knew. The system said she had gone mad. But as soon as she saw me, she was fine. That's not what you'd call a mad person. The system said she wanted to die, but she never succeeded. Is that really what you'd call wanting to die? The Ji and Liu families had been close allies for decades. Their interests were long intertwined. Liu Ruyan said she couldn't forgive Ji Boduan's actions. But after the Ji family seeded 3 projects, she gave up. Now that you're back, let's focus on living our lives. I let out a small laugh. In this state, appearing in front of others so suddenly, I don't even know what kind of panic it might cause, especially for my parents. In this world, in a month, I'll be leaving. They had already accepted the reality of my death and had adapted to life without me. I didn't want to appear by their side, disturbing the life they had finally managed to settle into. Therefore, I rarely went out. Occasionally in the evenings, Liu Ruyan would plead with me to accompany her and Jiang Ye for shopping and walks. I couldn't bring myself to refuse, because the moment I spoke, Liu Ruyan would become anxious. She would act like a madwoman, pulling at her own hair, losing control, forcing me to comply. You've already decided to come back. Why are you still treating me like this? It was only then that I could truly feel that she was indeed suffering. She wasn't mad. She was numbing herself. It was as if, by doing this, she could make me forgive her cruel past, as well as her current weakness and opportunism. I wore a mask, keeping a step behind her and Jiang Ye. After going out a few times, someone with ill intentions caught us on camera and posted it online. The Liu family's single young lady seen on a date with a new lover in the streets, the whole time smiling shyly, indicating something good is about to happen. When the trending search exploded, Liu Ruyan's phone was nearly blown up with calls. Among them, there was a call from Ji Boduan. Ruyan, I know you're upset about my marriage with Weiwei, but I've already recognized Ji Ye as my godson. Weiwei's health was damaged years ago, and she's had difficulty getting pregnant. You know that. As long as you're willing, Ji Ye will also be the heir to the Ji family in the future. You don't have to randomly find a man just to provoke me. Liu Ruyan, wanting to prove that she had severed ties with Ji Boduan, turned on the speakerphone in front of me. But who would have known that Ji Boduan would start off by saying such strongly suggestive words? Liu Ruyan's face turned pale as she responded to him. Ji Boduan, stop talking nonsense. I stopped loving you a long time ago. As for Jiang Ye, he will never recognize you as his father. What did I say wrong? Did I force you to give up on Zhang Cheng, that short-lived man? Did I even try to kill Jiang Ye? Zhang Cheng probably died without ever knowing you were carrying his child, didn't he? Ji Boduan let out a cold laugh, and then said something that shattered my worldview. So, he wouldn't even know that back then, you tried to abort the child twice with medication. It's just that you were unsure who the father of the child was. Shut up! Liu Ruyan's face turned completely white, and she screamed at Ji Boduan. What kind of person are you? You've been using me from the very beginning. Yes, I used you. You used me. We were always the same kind of people. Ruyan, you need to cut ties with that man quickly. Otherwise, I'm not sure what I might do. Ji Boduan paused for a moment, then suddenly spoke again. He won't be by your side, right? I locked eyes with Liu Ruyan, and she hung up the phone. With some regret, I pulled my hand out of my pocket. Ji Boduan had guessed correctly. I was indeed by Liu Ruyan's side. Not only was I there, I had secretly recorded the conversation. The next day after Liu Ruyan left, I was the one who took Jiang Ye to school. Jiang Ye was already 14 years old. I had loved him deeply in the past, but now my feelings for him were complicated. I couldn't love him the same way I loved my son anymore. But I couldn't fool myself into pretending he didn't exist either. Even so, I couldn't make any promises to him. I took him to the school gate, watching as his classmates ran up to him, curious eyes landing on me. "This is my dad," Jiang Ye loudly introduced me. Considering age, Ruyan and Ji Boduan were nearly 40 now, but I was only 25. It wasn't an exaggeration to call it a father-son situation. The child's eyes were so genuine. He thought Jiang Ye was just bragging. He stuck out his tongue. "Is this your brother? Who are you trying to fool?" "I'm not fooling you. He is my dad." I watched as the two of them safely entered the school gate before I left, but I didn't head straight home. Instead, I took a detour to buy a surveillance camera. Before Ruyan came back home, I arranged for the technician to install the camera in a discreet corner of the house. Based on what I knew of Ji Boduan, once he found out about my existence, he wouldn't sit idle by. With just a little investigation, he could easily find out that I almost never left the house. And from a few blurry photos, he could deduce that I was the kept boy of Ruyan. Then he could, when Ruyan wasn't home, show up at my door to cause trouble. But his speed was even faster than I had imagined. I had just sent the technician off after installing the surveillance camera. When the doorbell rang, I saw Ji Boduan's face on the door monitor. At first, he casually rang the doorbell twice, and when there was no response, he frowned and pressed it again. By the fourth time, he was sure I was doing it on purpose. So he started banging on the door. "Come on, I know you're inside. Open the damn door." During this pause, I quickly changed into a robe, exposing a large portion of my chest, and deliberately made red marks on my skin. When I opened the door, Ji Boduan was still shouting angrily. "I'm about to see just how big of a kept boy Ruyan has found." I stood inside the door, and he stood outside. The moment he saw me, Ji Boduan's voice shook several times. I feared that if the surveillance didn't capture him, he might run away, so I grabbed him and pulled him inside. "Mr. Ji, what brings you here?" Ji Boduan took a few steps back, leaning against the door, completely losing the calm he had when he first arrived. He stared at me, eyes wide in disbelief. "Jiang Cheng, didn't you die? How are you here?" After saying that, he shook his head wildly. "No, you can't be Jiang Cheng. I personally checked Jiang Cheng. He couldn't possibly be alive." "Who are you really?" "I am Jiang Cheng. I'm just another part of the world's play. My purpose for existing is to redeem the evil female villain and make the male and female leads come together. But I was accidentally killed by Ji Boduan, which caused him to become an imperfect male lead. He learned to lie, became cruel, and got lost in manipulation, unable to extricate himself. Just like now. Even if he knows I've come back to life, he'll be scared. He'll fear me. But he will never apologize. 10 years ago, I didn't get his apology. 10 years later, I'll have to rely on my own methods to make him pay. Yes, there's another reason I agreed to return to the system. I wanted to see whether the male lead, who's now a murderer, would pay the price for his actions after my death. I smiled and spoke to Ji Boduan. "I am Jiang Cheng. From City, graduated from C University, and I'm 25 this year." Every word I spoke, his face grew paler. When I finally said my age, he let out a sigh of relief. Ruyan really played her cards well to find such a similar substitute for you. He circled around me. If it weren't for the age mismatch, I would almost believe Jiang Cheng had come back to life. Is that so? It seems Mr. Ji is quite sensitive about Jiang Cheng. He snorted coldly. So what? He died in my car 10 years ago. He suddenly seemed to realize something. His gaze fell on me. Although you're not Jiang Cheng, your presence is also troubling me. I don't like my women being touched by other people. You're following Ruyan. That woman with a child. Probably just after money. I can give you 300. Just stay away from Liu Ruyan. Ji Boduan's words left me in silence. I reached out, focusing on the system. How is it that the world's values are like this and it hasn't collapsed yet? What is it even doing here? The system's tone was somewhat exhausted. The writers are still working overtime, trying to rewrite the script. I looked at Ji Boduan, dressed in black, and thought at this point, he still wants to clean up his image? I cleared my throat lightly and lowered my gaze to stare directly at Ji Boduan. Mr. Ji, don't you have too many women? As far as I know, you just got engaged to Miss Ji Weiwei last month. Weiwei is my wife. Ruyan is my woman. Is that a contradiction? I let out a slight laugh and took the card he handed me. Of course, it's not a contradiction. Believing also requires a process. In half a month, I'll naturally disappear without a trace. Don't worry. Ji Boduan's action was like adding fuel to the fire. I watched his confident back as he left. I flipped the bank card back and forth between my fingers. In half a month's time, it was enough for me to set up a grand scheme with the money Ji Boduan delivered to my door. If I were to punish him solely from a legal perspective, he would have many ways to escape the charges. So, I had to expose his crimes and true nature to the public. With the help of morality, I would make it impossible for him to escape. I just didn't know what expression he would have when he found out that I had designed all of this. But I probably wouldn't see it, because in half a month, it would be the day I had agreed to leave with the system. Liu Ruyan suggested that she wanted to accompany me back to my hometown in a city. I knew she was trying to use my parents to keep me. I raised an eyebrow, watching her pack one piece of clothing after another into the suitcase. I've asked for a long leave for Ji Ye. The three of us can use this time to relax. I took Ji Ye back to see my parents last year. They really miss you. When they see you, they will definitely be very happy. I watched her acting the same way she had with me before, and a strange sense of awkwardness surged in my heart. I wondered if, when I first approached Liu Ruyan, she felt the same way. Jiang Ye busied himself beside us. I could tell he was also quite excited. I sighed and told Liu Ruyan, "It's useless. I have parents there too. I won't give up on my own choices just for one side. And besides, I now have a wife and a son. I won't be swayed by her or Jiang Ye." Her tears immediately fell, real and full of sorrow. It seems that when I died, she didn't cry at the grave as hard as she did now. No, it's not true, Yao. You love me so much. How could you marry someone else? Are you mad at me for letting Ji Boduan go? I'll return the project. I'll have him arrested for you. How about that? I had loved her so much back then. Even thinking about abandoning my parents and staying for her. Such deep feelings had faded away during the time spent with Yao. Jiang Ye cried as well, sobbing as he shouted, "I hate Ji Boduan. I want Daddy. Please don't go, okay? I'm your son too." But my other son had just learned to call me Daddy. I placed my hand on my heart and sighed lightly. Thank goodness I'm not a jerk. Although I can't remain indifferent, I'm sure I haven't been emotionally swayed by Liu Ruyan. I truly don't like her anymore. I just hope this will all end soon, so I can see Yao and my son again soon. I held onto the suitcase and said, "Ruyan, don't go to a city. If you can't let go, I'll go with you to the reunion in 3 days." I paused for a moment, then added, "As your family member." About the reunion, Liu Ruyan had begged me about this a week ago. At that time, I almost immediately refused. When she heard my words, her eyes lit up. "All right, I'll listen to you. The reunion, Ji Boduan will definitely attend. And then Ji Weiwei as his family. will surely follow. I squeezed my phone tightly. Some things, of course, couldn't be just for me to enjoy alone. But tomorrow and the unexpected, you never know which will come first. Ruyan made breakfast and was just about to sit down and eat when she couldn't hold it in and ran to the trash can to vomit. After she finished, she wiped her mouth and looked at me. I quickly waved my hand, still holding half an egg in my mouth. I've only been back for half a month, and I haven't touched you. Ruyan gave a helpless smile. She explained, whether you believe it or not, I haven't had a man in a long time. Maybe it's because the weather's gotten warmer and my stomach's been off. That's why I've been feeling nauseous and having stomach pains a lot lately. Thanks to Ayao's influence. I subconsciously asked, has this happened many times? Ruyan thought for a moment. It's happened maybe 3 or 5 times. Why? Did you learn medicine in that world? Perhaps because I agreed to go with her to the reunion. She felt my attitude had improved. So her tone when talking to me had more playful teasing. I picked up my phone and scrolled through a few options on the app. I've scheduled you for a checkup tomorrow morning. Your lifestyle has been very irregular these past few years. It's better to get a checkup for peace of mind. But I'm not thinking the situation is necessarily bad. I wiped my mouth and sat on the sofa waiting for her to get ready. We arrived a bit late, and when we got there, the private room door was slightly open. I could hear a few classmates talking inside. I heard Ruyan's been keeping a boy toy. What boy toy? He's been out of school for years. Just some decent-looking young man. Even if he looks good, how can he compare to our Ji Boduan, the campus heartthrob? Ji Boduan let out a light laugh. Your sister-in-law's still here, and you dare make jokes about me? Ruyan couldn't take it anymore. She hooked her arm through mine and pushed the door open. We could hear everyone talking about me from far away. Say whatever you want, but ask me to my face. I'll answer you honestly. The room fell silent, and when they saw me, it was as if they had seen a ghost. Jiang Ye, everyone must be mistaken. At that moment, Ji Boduan stood up holding a wine glass. Jiang Ye has been dead for a long time, and it was a brutal death. You probably don't know, do you? Jiang Ye was hit by a car, and it struck his face directly. I heard that before the burial. The mortician worked for 3 days and nights to fix his face. His body was shattered into pieces. He then pointed at me. This guy's name is also Jiang Ye, but he's just a graduate who's been out of school for a few years. Unlike us older guys who are stepping into middle age, you're young. So it's understandable to want to take shortcuts. Before I could say anything, Ruyan couldn't hold back any longer. She raised her hand and slapped Ji Boduan across the face. Ji Boduan, what right do you have to discuss Jiang Ye? She gritted her teeth, holding back her anger, and pulled me to my seat, not forgetting to glare at Ji Boduan. Don't go too far. Dear Weiwei couldn't stand seeing Ji Boduan being bullied either, especially since she and Ruyan never got along. She immediately stood up as well. How come Miss Liu dares to act, but not to take responsibility? Or is it that someone hit a nerve? Are you used to bullying people? If this had been before, Ji Weiwei wouldn't have dared speak to Ruyan like this. But now she was about to be the future young mistress of the Ji family, so she had the courage to stand tall and face Ruyan. Ruyan used to have a strange personality and didn't have good relationships with others. At the reunion, with over 30 people present, not a single one stepped forward to speak for her. I looked at her with a complicated expression, and she awkwardly touched her hair. With a past like hers, there are probably quite a few people here who've been on the receiving end of her sharp tongue. I don't know if Ruyan ever bullied anyone, but I know the saying the dead must be respected. I suddenly remembered. Mr. Ji, you graduated early, and I'm sure all the knowledge you learned has been given back to the teachers by now. And also, for such a brutal scene, how can you speak of it as if you were right there, experiencing it yourself? Could it be that? Did you empathize with the driver who caused the accident? Ji Boduan never imagined that after accepting his money, I would so boldly humiliate him. He froze, pointing at me. You! During the reunion, Ji Weiwei stepped out to use the bathroom, and I found an excuse to slip away as well. As I passed by Ji Weiwei, I slipped a USB drive into her palm. I suggest Miss Chung avoid Ji Boduan and watch secretly. Inside, there's an audio recording, a surveillance video, and private photos taken by people Ji Boduan paid for. Various styles, with women of all kinds of looks. But the men are always just Ji Boduan. Ruyan had a bit to drink, and when she got home, she went straight to her room to sleep. She slept until midnight, when suddenly my door was knocked on. I was woken up and silently punched the bed, resigned, and got up to open the door. She was almost crouching down, holding her stomach, looking up at me with a pitiful expression. Jiang Ye, I'm in so much pain, I'm dying. I took her to the hospital. After the on-duty doctor did an ultrasound, his face darkened and he went to request a CT scan. He also drew several vials of blood, all marked as urgent. 3 hours later, Ruyan was receiving in the hospital room. The on-duty doctor called me outside. The results are in. Liver cancer. Preliminary assessment suggests it's at mid-stage. There is a chance for a cure. I looked through the small window in the door, staring at Ruyan, who was sleeping on the hospital bed, and couldn't quite believe it. Doctor, she's not even 40 yet. The on-duty doctor sighed as well. Isn't it rare for people at this age to get sick? The doctor shook his head and left. When Ruyan finished her injection, it was already past 8 in the morning. As soon as the nurse removed the needle, she tried to get out of bed. Ji Ye is home alone. I held her down. I've already sent your mom over. Then I'll go to the company. I didn't let go. I've also sent your dad over. She stopped moving and sat back down on the bed. Am I going to die? Not necessarily. Mid-stage liver cancer. But if you cooperate with the treatment, there's still a chance for recovery. She let out a slight, mocking smile. My retribution has finally come. At first, she pretended to calm down and grinned. But then she couldn't help but break down and cry. Why is this happening? I'm only in my 30s. Ji Ye is still so young. I didn't know how to comfort her, so I just patted her shoulder. I've already said it. You're not going to die yet. Didn't you just try to kill yourself half a month ago? Seems like wanting to die is just something people say. When it's actually time to die, no one can control the fear. Yow! Can you stay and spend more time with me? I frowned, looked up to the sky, and sighed deeply. What should I do? I'm trapped by moral blackmail. On the 5th day of Ruyan's hospitalization, Ji Boduan and Ji Weiwei came to visit. While Ji Boduan was talking to Ruyan, Ji Weiwei stood up and signaled for me to step outside and talk. Mr. Zhang, how much would it take to destroy the negatives you have? I stood across from her, feeling shocked. I couldn't believe it. After seeing so many world-shattering videos and photos, the first thing this woman thought of wasn't to leave, but to cover it up. You actually want to forgive him? Ji Weiwei's face turned a dull yellow. She looked extremely fatigued. What else can I do during those 2 years abroad? Because I was foolish, I lost 2 children. My health is no longer good. Ji Boduan is right. I probably won't have children in this life. If I leave him, how else can I live? How will you live? Any way is better than living with a scumbag for the rest of your life. Especially when this person is a murderer. I closed my eyes for a moment. If you leave now, maybe Ji Boduan will generously give you money. to secure your future. But if you don't leave, you'll have nothing. Because I can't destroy the evidence. Not only will I not destroy the evidence, but I've also found the man who took the fall for Ji Boduan and was manipulated into being released on medical parole. He doesn't recognize me, so he didn't recognize me. This man, after 3 years in prison, spent another 7 years in the hospital. Who knows how much longer he'll stay there? For him, this hospital feels more like a prison than a hospital. He's eager to vent his emotions. Under my careful guidance, he spoke a lot of things he shouldn't have said. For example, he clenched his fists and stared out the window. Ji family promised me back then, after being released on medical parole, they were going to find a way to release me. But they went back on their word. Of course. For the Ji family, someone who can't leave the hospital is much safer than someone who's out there and could have an accident at any time. The former is definitely safer. If it weren't for the fear that he would say something reckless in prison, the Ji family probably wouldn't have bothered to get him out. Mr. Lin, do you know that the person who caused the accident back then has now taken over the Ji family and is worth over $1 billion? I wonder if he ever came to thank you, his lifesaver. Lin Young became even angrier. Everything I have today is all because of me. His wealth is over $1 billion, so why doesn't he at least give me half? I was amused by Lin Yang's ignorant and unrealistic ideas. Maka too, so you want to overturn the case? I know! You have the evidence. Lin Yang certainly had the evidence, but the reason the case had never been overturned was because he feared the Ji family. He was afraid that before I even made it to court, the Ji family would silently resolve things. I placed a photo in front of him. It was a photo of me from 10 years ago. You don't recognize me because the person who caused the accident wasn't you. If it were you, you wouldn't have gone so long without realizing it. I am Zhang Chun, the one who died in the car accident 10 years ago. The day Lin Yang changed his testimony, there were only 2 days left. Before the 1-month deadline, I contacted the Ji family's rivals. I sent all the recordings and videos out. I didn't even need to do anything. The Ji family's negative news flooded the internet. And at the same time, Lin Yang sat in front of the courthouse. Beside him were 8 bodyguards I hired for him. He started a live stream, revealing the truth of what happened back then. He even pulled out a recording from Ji's mother contacting him back then. He stood in front of the camera, showing the words justice and fairness in the shot. He said, "Now I'm going in. The Ji family has been controlling everything. But I still believe in the law. If this isn't enough to convict Ji Boduan, then I hope the public will bear witness to this. The Ji family is the biggest cancer in Sea City." As I watched the live stream in the hospital room, Ruyan was awake. She had just finished surgery and had entered the radiotherapy stage. Her expression was, "Did you do this?" I froze for a moment and turned my gaze toward her. Then suddenly I smiled. It was him who did it. The Ji family stock plummeted. The Liu family also suffered a huge blow. But it seemed that Ruyan really didn't care anymore. Jiang Ye also came to the hospital. When he found out Ruyan was sick, his eyes were red. I went out to get some water, but Jiang Ye grabbed the corner of my shirt. "Dad, can you stay?" I turned to look at him, squatted down and seriously explained to him, "Jiang Ye, strictly speaking, we only knew each other as father and son for just over 20 days. Just like when you were little and didn't recognize me as your father, I can't easily recognize you as my child now, because my real child is still waiting for me at home." Ruyan didn't know when she appeared behind us, but she heard everything. She didn't say anything, just forcing a smile. Let's go back to the room. At night, when it was time to sleep, Jiang Ye slept in the adjacent room. I lay on the couch. Ruyan's room door was open. As I was about to fall asleep, I suddenly heard her speak. Are you leaving the day after tomorrow? I softly hummed in response. Then I heard her sigh. Ah Chang, do you hate me? I sat up, asking myself the same question. Do I hate Liu Ruyan? It seemed like I should hate her. But somehow I couldn't bring myself to, because I had already stopped loving her. Ruyan, your illness is only in the middle stage. The Liu family has the ability to give you the best medical treatment. As long as you cooperate well, the chance of recovery is still high. And Jiang Ye needs you. She didn't respond. I lay back down to rest. But then I heard her suppressed sobs. Ah Chung, I'm very scared. Can you not leave? Ruyan, I've saved you before. And you've saved me. Now I'm back. But it's just to put the world back on track. You're afraid because your life has been too smooth. You don't know me. I once fell from a wall, dozens of meters high, crushed all over. It was Ah Yao who stayed with me. That allowed me to survive. Now, she's still waiting for me. She loves me, and I love her. We can't be apart. The weather the day I left was much like when I first came. I packed Jiang Ye's school bag, then sent him to school. At the school gate, Jiang Ye tightly hugged me. Dad, don't worry. I'll take good care of Mom. I patted his head, watching him disappear from sight. On my way back to the hospital, Liu Ruyan's parents were already there. When her mom saw me, she just tucked Liu Ruyan's blanket a bit. You're back. But you didn't go to city to visit? Don't you regret it? I shook my head. They're already very calm. Liu Ruyan half sat up, staring at me for a long time. Then she forced a smile. Jiang Chun, you should go. Be happy in the future. I will. You too. When I returned, it was just past midnight. I quietly pushed open the door. Ah Yao was holding our son, sound asleep, graduated from a prestigious school. Middle management at one of the top 100 national companies. With a kind wife from a good family, and a healthy, lively son. Ah Yao mumbled softly. You're back? I squeezed her hand. So calm, sleeping so soundly. You're really not afraid I won't come back? Ah Yao turned over to face me, kissed my nose and chin. Didn't I come back? I trust you. My eyes watered. A warm light abed, the three of us tightly embracing each other. And